Okay, hello and welcome to the live stream for March 6, 2019. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that we do every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So if you are new here, welcome, and if you are returning here, welcome. Now, can you guys hear me okay? Does my sound work this week? Angie and I had a whole, oh my gosh, a whole issue yesterday with sound. It was awful. Oh, thank you, Karen. Karen says, turn your clocks ahead this weekend. Okay, Rob can hear me. Okay, good. I'm glad. Oh my gosh, you should have seen me and Angie trying to troubleshoot. It was quite the ordeal. So, well, how is everybody doing? Anything new and exciting in your world? Hello, Agatha. Agatha, kind of off topic. The book's not in here. It's in the other room. We both started the book club book for March. So just FYI, we're going to be discussing this book. It's what is it called, Agatha? Children of Immature Parents, something along the lines of that. So we're going to be discussing that book the last Thursday of this month at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And it is fantastic. It is such a great book. And so it was so funny because we were going back and forth, just so excited about it. And we're like, oh my gosh, this book is so kind of upsetting because it brings a lot of, just kind of our own unaddressed issues to light. And I don't know. I mean, everybody's going to have their own, opinion on it when they read it. But at least for us two, it was very much just kind of this huge wow factor of I cannot believe, like, I see my own stuff so much clearly. Kiara says, I couldn't wait for this to start tonight. Well, good deal. Welcome. Okay, Agatha says, Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents is the title of the book. Thank you. Yes, great book. Relatively short book. It's very engaging. It's I go through because I really take extensive notes, but I would think for just if a person's just reading it, it would take you probably 2 days tops. So let's see. I'm trying to think if there was anything that I wanted in particular to bring up. Oh, well, that's wonderful. High Quality says, I found a new doctor. She's not just a yes. She's actually has experience with what I'm struggling with. That is a huge victory. So yay, you. And I really hope that that goes well. Speculator says, Dana, did you stop doing your online book reviews? Because of the narcissistic abuse, he'd never let me read. Your reviews have been a lifesaver for me. No, I still do them. We do them the end of every month. Last Thursday of every month, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is what we're doing for kind of book club. Were you talking about like how I used to have the format for the book club where I would just really go through my notes and it was just me, or are you talking about something different? I just remembered I forgot to set a timer, so I got to do this real quick. And just FYI, for the people that listen to this on the podcast, I'm having some sound issues, and so I have an audio guy that's been trying to help me troubleshoot. So hopefully we're going to be getting some podcasts out here shortly. Thank you, Grace, for the live stream donation. I appreciate that. And very cool statue of Buddha in your thumbnail picture. Let's see here. That's cute. High Quality says, hi, mods. Hi, chat. Hugs if you need them. Oh, I like that. Ben says, I realize that I still need to work on my empty buckets. Yeah, that's a big realization. It's a game changer. And it's fantastic that you realize that there's still work that needs to be done. I think with our buckets, it's one of these things where we have to continually be checking in with ourselves, to kind of just see where we are and what do we need? What do we need at this point? So, yeah, self-awareness is the name of the game. It is the name of the healing game. And that is truly the goal, is to really just reconnect with your wants and your needs and your thoughts and your feelings and all of that. And once you really do, just, it's amazing how much smoother life goes, because you know, you're in tune with yourself. So. Oh, that's a good question. Agatha asks, I was just wanting to respond to Ben. Which buckets does he think are getting empty fastest? That is a great question. Tara asks, what do you guys think about the Watts case now? I haven't, I know he did some sort of interview or was on Dr. Phil the other day. I didn't watch it. So I guess what did I miss? You'll have to fill us in. Oh, okay. Speculator was asking about my book club stuff. Says, yes, I meant the book club notes. I call them cliff notes. On your website, I haven't had a new book since August. Yes, I really just kind of hit a wall, with just everything, with everything, with going back to school and the house fire and, dealing with contractors, trying to rebuild it and everything. And I just, yeah. So the plan is, this is why I am reading this book now. Like, I'm not going to wait until the very end. Before, I was really just so exhausted emotionally, and I was just coasting on fumes. And so now I'm feeling really good. I feel like I've got my energy back. I've got, I feel like I'm working with all cylinders now. So yes, I plan on doing that again. Erica asks, has anyone seen the new documentary called Leaving Neverland? No, but it is on my list. I just texted Travis earlier and said, please add this to the movie request list. So hopefully I'll have that, watch that in the near future. I'm so curious to know what is the latest thing with Chris Watts. Oh, you're kidding. Oh my God. No. Are you serious? Was that on the Dr. Phil? When did that come out? Teacher Springs. Oh, you guys, this is so disturbing. So I'm so, just trigger warning about Chris Watts. You might want to just mute it for the next, 30 seconds here. But Teacher Spring says Chris Watts had just admitted to all of the murders. And the daughter, I don't even know if I can read that out loud. And the daughters were alive when he went to the oil tanks. I'm sorry, I can't, hold on, I'm sorry. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I just, no, I hadn't heard that. That's awful. It's just, there's just no, there's no end to some of this behavior, you just keep thinking like there's got to be a bottom to it. Like it just can't possibly get worse. And to find that out is just, it's just beyond. Yeah. And you're right. And Wonder Woman says, and he's still lying, I'm sure. Yeah. I'm sure you're right. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, interesting. Hooray says, I watched Leaving Neverland. Narcissistic abuse for sure. It's horrible. Let's see here. Spiritual Goddess of Enlightenment says, I have a question. I'm scared of change, like really bad. It freaks me out. It almost makes me feel paralyzed because I'm scared of taking responsibility for my own choices. I'm trying to move out. And this ties into all areas of my life. Well, I guess first and foremost, I just want to kind of validate you that change is always scary for any of us. It truly, truly is, because change means doing something that we've never done before. And it's scary getting out of our comfort zone, even if our comfort zone isn't working for us, and even if we know it's time to leave. So starting something new is always scary. And something that can help with that is trying to chunk it down into more manageable steps. So maybe that might mean setting like, an afternoon aside to pack, or to set some goals. Like, okay, this is going to be the one thing I do today is I'm going to call around and look for apartments, or I'm going to go drive around and actually tour some apartments, or I'm going to go fill out some applications, and just allowing yourself to have that time and just trying to break it down into kind of bite-sized chunks that can really help. Because, moving and ending a relationship, all of this stuff, that's a lot of major life changes all at once. And something else that can help with that is to really like plan ahead for this. It's going to be difficult because it's change. So if you have some friends, or you have a therapist or a life coach or whoever's in your support system, spending time with them before you do this, and then making sure to spend time with them afterwards. So it's a lot easier when, you can have support there. Well, good for you. She says, I just got done applying for full-time jobs and I was feeling fearful. But you felt the fear and you did it anyhow. And that's huge. That's huge. So I hope you can celebrate that victory, because so much of this moving forward, it is these what we might perceive at the time as kind of little victories, but they're not. Like, they're really big victories. This is you reclaiming your life step by step. So pat yourself on the back, treat yourself to, I don't know, whatever, a coffee or whatever it is that you like to drink, and just let that soak in. Let's see here. New Beginning says, question, I have to co-parent with a narcissist. I'm all good mentally and spiritually until he picks them up. Does anyone have any advice? How do I stay grounded and not let him into my head? Well, I guess my question would be, what does go through your head when he picks him up? Are you missing him? Is it anger? Is it fear? Is it frustration? What kind of emotions does that bring up within you? Oh, wonderful. Sunflower. Thank you for letting me know. She says, thank you, Dana. Your boundary setting examples have helped me tremendously with confidently setting them with a very needy neighbor. I know I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. Well, that's fantastic. It's you reclaiming your life and reclaiming peace in your life, which is so big, especially if you've got a neighbor who is, always asking favors and always coming over and these kinds of things. Let's see. Happy says, with narcissism being so talked about, why don't ones in your I'm not sure what you mean by that, say support group have such little compassion? Are you talking about different members in the support group? That there's certain members in the support group that don't have compassion? If that's the case, I will tell you. The challenge, there's so many challenges. Oh, in your support group? I'm not sure. Whose support group are we talking about? Are there issues in my support group, or are you having challenges in your support group? I'll share while you're answering that. I'll give you feedback based on what I deal with every single day. Okay. Happy says, no, people that are in my support group with family and friends. I really feel like people that haven't ever been through something like this, they really just don't get it. Because in their mind, it's sort of like, well, somebody's being mean to you, why don't you just leave? Like, it's very simple. It's sort of like telling an alcoholic, boy, you know what? You should really just quit drinking. Problem solved. Or telling the person who's 600 pounds, hey, you just need to eat salad and eat differently. It's not that simple. And there's I'm preaching to the choir here. Like, I know you know this, but like, when you're in it, there's so much to untangle. There's confusion, there's manipulation, there's self-doubt, there's all kinds of the stuff that's surfacing. Sometimes there's children and there's finances and there's a house. It's not easy to just up and leave. But other people, because they're not on the receiving end of this, they just don't get it. And even if they have been through it, if it's been a while to where they're more at that place where they've completely healed, and this painful relationship isn't like a bomb that went off in their life. It's more of they've been able to process it, and it's now just an event that happened in their life. It's not the major thing in their life. Once they've gotten to that place in healing, they can forget how fragile a person is when they're fresh out. I forget. And there are times, and that's one of the, there's so many benefits for the support group. But one of the things I really like about that for me is that I'm constantly around different people that are in different stages of healing. And if I didn't have that, I think it would be very easy for me to just forget, because that was so long ago for me. So I would imagine that it's a very similar thing for other people. But okay, let's see. Oh, well, thank you, Phoenix. Says, I love that you understand this so much to the core. I cannot get anyone to understand the words coming out of your mouth. Thank you, Dana. Well, thank you. I do. I just absolutely am so passionate about this, and it's stuff I think about all the time. Like, how can I better get through to people and communicate this message, right? This awareness to both survivors and to their support system, and to get it out there, because it's just such an isolating thing, and it's such a complicated thing. So so let me just go back to this support group thing, because this is something, even if we're not talking about my support group, if we're just talking in general, the challenge with support groups, whether they're in person or online, is it's generally the general public. And so it's a mix of people. And the one thing that we all have in common is that we've been through this. We've been through this narcissistic abuse, but their background is going to be very different. They might be racist or bigoted or sexist or you name it. They might have if they're fresh out, they might be very easily triggered and very reactive because of that. There's just so many different factors at play. And so trying to get everybody to kind of be nice and to remain respectful is a real challenge. The Facebook group, I don't even know how many people are in there now, 54,000. So, and my website group is, I'd have to check, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000 people. So it's a lot of people. And so there's certain things that we're doing, like in my Facebook group, to try to set members up for success, because, I just think this is human nature. People get into a group and they tend to just think, well, you know what? I bet everybody is just kind of like me, especially if they have something in common with that other person, whether it be sexual orientation, abuse, addiction, religion, like you name it. Your kids are both in soccer, whatever it is, there's kind of that one unifying factor. People tend to just drop their boundaries and think, oh, okay, this person gets me. And that can be really problematic in support groups. So, because people they're so relieved, like, oh man, I'm so glad I finally found somebody that understands what I'm going through. And then they're very quick. They'll just be like, oh, well, you know what? I'll give you a ride home, or you can come stay with me, or I'll loan you money, or I'll just tell you everything about me. And then they find out kind of down the road, oh gosh, this person isn't an emotionally safe person, or they're not the person I thought they were, or they have their own stuff going on outside of abuse. So we try, me and the admins in the Facebook group especially, really try to be proactive and in giving people a heads up and reminding them. So there's going to be certain steps that we're going to be doing, just FYI, in the Facebook group over the next week to help get everybody on track. And so one of those things we're going to be doing is welcome post, probably at least twice a week, to all new members, reminding them of rules, reminding them to be nice, letting people know, please plan on being triggered and to just disengage if that happens. So, and then I got another question. Ariel says, could you address the LGBT discrimination in your groups? That really saddens me if that has been your experience, because I really try to provide as safe enough space for people. And whenever there's any of that kind of stuff, if somebody alerts, if you, report the comment, we take that stuff very seriously. We delete it off of there if it's, really insensitive, and if it's really insensitive and inflammatory and that kind of stuff, and it's not just difference of opinion, we remove people. So there was a post the other day, and I normally, when posts come up with stuff like that, I normally do a post that says, okay, guys, just a heads up, like keep it respectful. Like, this is important, because again, people tend to think, oh, people can relate to, my situation. And then they realize, oh my gosh, no, actually, they might have strong opinions about gay people or bisexual people, and kind of thinking, oh, well, everybody must kind of think along the same lines, or that nobody's going to get offended by that. And then of course people do, right? So yeah, we try to address that stuff and nip it in the bud as quickly as we can. Let's see here. Let me scroll up. Oh, I forgot. I'm getting questions here. Erica says, I'm reading Jackson Mackenzie's new book, Whole Again, and it's excellent. Awesome. I believe that is our book club book for June. So we will be reading and discussing that. So that's good. I wouldn't have expected anything less, but glad to know that it is a good book. Let's see here. Let's see, Sandra says, I am no contact with my narcissistic addict mother and all immediate family that are flying monkeys, having a hard time being positive and knowing I'm not wrong. Do you have any suggestions? Feeling lots of anxiety. I guess I would encourage you to write down all of the reasons that you went no contact. And because it can be one of those things where, you waffle back and forth. Am I being reasonable? Am I being unreasonable? Maybe I could try something different. Maybe I could try harder, this, that, and the other. Only you have the answer with kind of what you need to do in order to keep yourself safe and sane. So I would just encourage you to write it all down. And so if you start feeling low, you can go back and read that list. So I'm sorry. I know it's a very going no contact, especially when it's with multiple people, can be really anxiety inducing, and it can be really lonely, especially when it's a lot of your own family. So I just would encourage you to start really getting some healthy support around you, and whatever that might look like, with friends, with a therapist, with a life coach, with support groups, what have you, because that can be really difficult. And yeah, so I'm sorry that you're going through that, but I would guess it's a fairly normal thing. Happy said, oh, well, thank you. It says, it's not much, but I want to say thank you. Well, I definitely appreciate it. It will go, all funds currently are going towards my tea habit, my Egyptian licorice tea. So I much appreciate that. And thank you for your kind words too. Yes, and that's a very valid point. Agatha was saying some people in support groups are probably still very reactive due to having complex CPTSD. Yes, I would agree completely. I know I was, and I feel like there's still times that I am, and I'm normally by nature a pretty mellow person. And when all of this happened to me, I was shocked as to the level. I had never felt anger like that before in my life. And I did not know how to handle. I'm not even sure if I'd really even felt anger, to be honest with you, before in general in my life. That's not healthy. But like, I'm just saying, I was very out of tune with my feelings in a lot of ways. And feeling that level of rage was really terrifying. And so yes, I would imagine that other people, I think it's a pretty common thing for people to really kind of have that hairline trigger or hairline reflex when it comes to things. It's amazing that any little thing can set a person off when they're first out. It's part of it. Well, thank you, Joe. He says, love y'all. You and your team are great. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you. And thank you for the live stream donation. I appreciate that. Let's see. Oh, yes, Manju. Thank you. Says your work helps so many, Dana. You're so humble. And I feel one thing with abuse is it really humbled us not to seek validation from others and to love ourselves. Yes, my dear. Yes. I love that part about turning inward and seeking validation from within. There are so many wonderful lessons that we can squeeze out of this. And that is for sure one of them. And it will absolutely take your life on a completely different track. When you know yourself well enough that you don't need validation from other people, and you don't get swayed by the criticism of other people, that you know what you need to do. Like you're in tune enough with what's right for you. So yes, that's huge. Oh, well, thank you. Thanks, James. James, the Broviver, I love that name, says, thanks for everything you do, Dana. Also, yay, T Fund. Yes, yay, T Fund indeed. Thank you. And just FYI, for those of you who don't know, James has his own YouTube channel up and going where he's discussing kind of narcissistic abuse through his own lens, of course, his own experiences. But I think the added benefit is it gives a male voice to this topic, and there's just not too many out there. So it's definitely needed. Okay, let's see. Okay, so new beginnings back with the narcissist or ex picking up kids. I feel like I have to question my own sanity. I feel fearful. I start trembling. How do I fix this and trust myself? Well, okay. I think one of the things that you can do is now that you know, these are the two feelings that you tend to feel, that you get really fearful and you get anxious and you just kind of come unglued. If you have somebody that you can practice with, somebody that's emotionally safe, like a friend or a therapist, life coach, somebody in your inner circle that's a good support, practice this ahead of time. It's one of the most important things, one of the most helpful things I think we can do. So practice the other person playing the part of your ex and you being there. And try to really get in the moment of the things that he might say, the things that you might say, the different interactions when things really start kind of throwing you for a loop. You can, so in addition to that, in addition to practicing being in that situation, you could also do some grounding exercises beforehand. So if you know that you're going to see him, bring your attention down into your feet and start focusing on your senses, feeling your feet in your shoes, feeling the temperature of the air outside, feeling the, if you know, whatever you're wearing, like your pants or your top, maybe kind of running your hands along that, feeling the fabric. What does it feel like? Is it soft? Is it scratchy? Is it thick? Is it thin? Really getting fully present in the moment. That all of that fear, all of that stuff is done. You know, this, you're here now. A lot of those emotions, my guess would be, is it's residual stuff. It's that residual fear. It's that residual anxiety. So bringing yourself into the moment can help. It might also help to go for, you know, like a quick run, even if it's seriously like 4 houses up and then 4 houses back. Just something really quick to just burn off that anxious energy. So these kinds of things. I think you'll know once you start kind of practicing some of these different techniques, like what works for you and what doesn't. And then you just start doing more of what works for you. Let's see. Oh, well, thank you, Laurette. Says, I'm glad the night that you're on and that this channel really helps a lot. Well, I am very appreciative of that. Oh, Agatha's talking about the book. Oh gosh. She's talking to Postmodern and says that she said it was really eye-opening and that she cried and kicked the wall when reading it. I wasn't quite to that level, but I was just stunned. I could not believe like how many insights I just kept having about my own family dynamic and about my own behavior. And I don't know what it is. I seriously don't know why. I was telling Agatha this earlier, like normally we'll read a book club book and I'll have a handful of aha moments and I'll leave and I'm like, oh, I really enjoyed that book. This book has been one of the very few that I have, it's full of tabs, and it's not just aha moments. It's just these like profound moments. Yes, been very, very eye-opening. And Agatha says, yes, sure. She says, it's harder for me because I have a kid and I realized I parented her with so much emotional immaturity. Yeah. And I think, what's so frustrating about all this is this stuff really, it's not taught, right? And so how much more beneficial would it have been if this kind of stuff was taught in a parenting class? Normally parenting classes, they talk about how to change a diaper, how to swaddle a baby, how to breastfeed, these kinds of things. What does your baby need? How often to feed them? The basics. But wouldn't it be so cool if there was that discussion about the importance of bonding with your child, the importance of really the first 7 years of your child and engaging with them, and these kind of the rundown of kind of things to do and things to watch out for, I guess. It doesn't even have to be a full book. It could just be like a brochure, just something simple, stapled together, like 10 pages long. Just the basics would really give people a heads up. And I think a lot of people would be open to that, but they don't realize that they don't know what they need to learn. There was a gal here when I was reading this book. There was a gal here. This was probably at least a year ago. It might have even been 2 or 3 that came on the live stream. And she was so scared about having children. And she was so terrified that she was going to be like her parents. And I just, there's certain comments or questions that just stick out and they stick with you over the years. And that was one of them. And because we were talking about that, about, okay, well, what, basically making a list of like, okay, well, what did everything that your mom did that you didn't like, or that was really problematic, like write all that down. And then you can work towards doing the opposite. That's kind of maybe a shortcut way to doing some of this stuff. But I think when a person grows up in an abusive childhood, they're at such a loss. Like, I don't know. I've never had appropriate behavior like role modeled, and I'm so scared that I'm going to treat my child in the same way, like subconsciously that I was treated, and I just don't want to do that to him. And they really struggle. But yeah, I think if there could be just a condensed book for people like that want children, they want, they're doing all of this personal growth, all of this stuff. They're trying to make their lives work. I think it would be helpful. Life After Gray says, yes, my stepdaughter had RAD, the reactive attachment disorder, because her mom did not bond with her at all. Yeah, and that can be such a challenge when a child has an attachment disorder, especially like that. Yeah. Rob says, that's so on point, Dana, to do the opposite. I've been doing that all my life with my father's abuse. He's got dementia now, and so much for his terror. Yeah, it's great. It's amazing. I think that our inner selves know, I just think human beings intuitively kind of understand, like, what's healthy, what's nourishing, and this based on how it makes you feel. And so if something really feels off, if it feels icky, if it feels wrong, if it feels, uncomfortable, inappropriate, all of that kind of stuff, just stay away from that and go for what feels nourishing, what feels healthy. If you have a child, treating them how like you would have wanted to be treated. This book, The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, is fantastic. I would strongly encourage anybody. I think everybody should read it personally, but especially if you're at a place where you're thinking about having children, it can just bring so much awareness of everything to light. Let's see. Abuse Free says, hi, Dana. I was doing fine after leaving my ex a few years back. Now I found one of my new contacts is similar to my ex, and I got severe panic attacks in a bad week. Is that part of the journey? Yes. And I would also say it's part of the healing. Because when we start getting those, when we start having this visceral reaction to behavior that's similar to that's problematic behavior that we experienced in our past, and abuse is really problematic. And so it's amazing. Your brain picks up on this kind of stuff, and it's always, your brain's job is to keep you safe. And so when it detects danger, it's going to alert you. And so when it makes sense to me, but if it's detecting danger that's very similar to something in the past that caused you a tremendous amount of pain, to me, that's where that level of panic attacks and that anxiety and feeling nauseated, all of this kind of stuff comes into play, because your brain remembers, hey, last time we experienced this, it was really bad and it really threw us for a loop. So stay away from the person that caused you pain, or people that even kind of have this behavior in general. So it's really your brain trying to keep you safe, even though at the time it can just feel it can feel discouraging and defeating. Like, why am I feeling this way? What's wrong with me? I thought I was over this. When am I going to move past this? It can really get easy to get caught up in feeling bad about having such an extreme reaction to a situation that doesn't maybe on the surface seem so extreme, but really it's your brain just trying to protect you. So, and I think too, on the healing part of this journey, so much of it is going to be really making peace with all of these different emotions and these situations that surface. That would probably be one of my top tips for people. It's so easy to slip into judging ourselves and being like, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, or I should feel another way, or I should be at a different place, or I can't believe I'm here again, or boy, triggers come up and you just get discouraged and you get overwhelmed and you don't want to get out of bed for a week, these kinds of things. Instead of getting so down on yourself about all of those different emotions that come up, I think try to view them more through the lens of curiosity and not judgment. Of, boy, that's really interesting. Okay, what? In order to do that, you almost have to kind of become the observer. So you're not so caught up in the emotions. You're realizing, okay, I'm experiencing all of these emotions. I'm going to kind of swim with them. But for now, I just need to take a step back and figure out, what messages do they have for me? What are they trying to tell me? What could this possibly mean? And when you can really get into a good relationship with your emotions, with all of them, it's just so powerful. And especially, and I think our whole lives and kind of throughout society, we are so programmed to run away from uncomfortable emotions. We call them bad. I don't want to feel bad. These are bad emotions. But the reality is they're not bad. They're just uncomfortable. But those uncomfortable emotions oftentimes carry really important messages for us. And they're so uncomfortable because our brain is trying to get our attention. Something either needs to be addressed, some boundaries need to be corrected, or some situation needs to change, or it's a reminder to not do something, painful again. There's important messages there. So, but yeah, it's all part of it. Okay, let's see, let me scroll up here. Okay, I'm getting some more questions. That's a great question, Catherine. She says, what makes someone attracted to danger? That's a big question. When you say, I guess, can you give me some more context? Because I think sometimes, well, I guess it's just going to depend on the context. For a lot of people, they view abusive relationships as these are the bad boys or the bad girls, right? Like these are the dangerous people. And it's generally not so much that So I'm just going to answer this question and what's coming to mind, and then you set me straight. Okay. It's not so much that targets of abuse are attracted to dangerous people when they get involved with an abuser. It tends to be that that abuser is very charming, they're charismatic, they're very I put this in quotes, they're very attentive, but it's really smothering. They are a lot of this behavior can be misread as something that's positive. Like they're very persistent, they're very take charge, they're very impulsive, they're fun, they're exciting. And then kind of down the road, you realize, oh my gosh, no, they're not exciting, they're impulsive, and they have no internal brakes on their behavior. They're not caring by calling and texting, dozens of times a day. They're controlling. They're not persistent. They're trying to win. So there's that factor. It's just kind of sorting it out. But to the outsiders, it often looks like, oh, you're just attracted to dangerous people. I really don't feel like that's the case the vast majority of the time. When people tend to be attracted to maybe more like general dangerous situations, skydiving, bungee jumping, driving fast, these kinds of things. Danger, it quickens the pulse and it can make a person feel alive. And there is kind of that thrill. So it's more about, I think, can you kind of, channel that need for those kinds of sensations in a healthy, positive way. Can you go skydiving or bungee jumping versus driving your motorcycle 100 miles an hour down a mountain road without a helmet, or getting tangled up. If there is that attraction to dangerous people, kind of figuring out what exactly is that about. Okay, let's see. Erica says, I like how Dana says toxic people versus specific personality disorder names. My most recent toxic ex was the exact opposite of a covert narcissist. There was no charm, no love bombing, no flattery. And that tends to be that more like overt narcissism, where they're more self-absorbed, there's no filter, they're controlling. And I'll go into this in a second. I just wanted to address the toxic people versus specific personality disorder names. It's such a challenging line to walk because, certain specific personality disorder names that can cause all kinds of confusion. And then people really, understandably so, they really want to figure out, well, is this person a narcissist or are they just a person with a ton of really selfish, problematic behavior? And even if I could diagnose, I think really focus, there's a time and place, I think, for understanding the importance behind a personality disorder. Like generally in the beginning, people, they're new to this. They have this worldview of other people kind of are like them. They have the same moral compass and that people are inherently good. And then through enough experience with these kind of people, then they realize, I didn't know that people like this walked the earth. And if they did, I thought for sure I'd be able to spot them. I can't believe I married one. Help. It's a very eye-opening thing. And so, so I do try to talk about these things in more of a general context for quite a few reasons. But even saying like toxic people, I struggle with that because I don't know, like even, I'm not saying that I feel like really rotten people need to, I don't know, I need to kind of walk on eggshells and make sure I don't hurt their feelings. But on some level, it does kind of concern me I don't know. I just want to keep the humanity, I guess, of people. So it's just a lot to say. If we were to technically rephrase it and be like, people with toxic behavior, like that's a mouthful to say every single time. So yeah, I don't know. That was long and rambling. I hope that made sense. But let's talk about, oh, this lip gloss is so good. It tastes like fruit punch. I have not had a fruit punch since I was a kid. So good. Okay. But let's talk about this, the covert and overt thing, because a lot of people, myself included, get hung up on this. And so, and this is very common. Like I was saying earlier, your brain, its number one job is to keep you safe. And one of the ways that it does this is it is a pattern recognition machine, and it's a meaning-making machine. And so it links up, oftentimes incorrectly, cause and effect. And this happens a lot in abuse, where people afterwards, hold on, I just gotta, thank you, Mo, for the live stream donation and the question. And I am going to post this down in the chat because I think it'll disappear here before I'm done with my answer. So, but thank you. I will get to it in a second. So the pattern recognition of it all. So with abuse, what happens is people tend to associate, and a lot of this is subconscious. They know what caused them pain. And so it's weird because your brain will pick out things that are significant about that. So it might be, that the person that abused you had red hair, or that they were a Scorpio, or that they were, I don't know, a dentist. And so now and they drove a black Mustang. And so now it might be these character traits that you're hypervigilant, you're on high alert for. And, but the problem is abuse is behavior. It's not those things. And so with behavior, if you've experienced that, the love bombing, the over the top, the charm, the laying it on too thick, and you're like, okay, that is a no-go. I know that that's insincere. I like, you're not attracted to that anymore. Like, you see that stuff clearly. And strangely enough, a person with really kind of overt narcissism, where they're, kind of brash and insensitive and all of this, it can almost feel safer because it's sort of like, you know what you're getting. It's like the snake in the road versus the snake in the grass, which is what the covert narcissism tends to be. So, or covert abusers tend to be. So, so what happens is, a lot of people are like, okay, well, I want to date again, but I need to keep myself safe. And so they avoid Prince Charming or Princess Charming. And instead they go with a person that's more, overt and brash. And then of course then they realize, oh my gosh, yeah, I kind of see what I'm getting here, but what I'm getting isn't good. And then they might tend to go back to more of that covert behavior, because they're like, well, I really, it's just, it takes a little while to get your sea legs with understanding what is problematic and what is normal and what is healthy, I guess. So it can be really common for the person to get out of that overt relationship, and they're like, man, and maybe like a year later, like, I really want to start dating again. And then this real charming person comes along, and all of these red flags are going off, but then you're telling yourself, well, I don't want to miss out on a good person. And maybe I'm just having issues because of my relationships, and I don't know. And then you've got your friends and other people that are telling you, oh, you just, you've got to love like you've never been hurt before. And this person is so charming and they're so wonderful. And then you kind of really start doubting yourself. It's like what Manju had said earlier. Then we're getting validated and we're kind of getting pushed as well by other people. And it's easy to get pushed off track in those kinds of situations. But that's my theory on why people tend to go from overt to covert and then back again. They just kind of keep going back and forth because they're missing these certain pieces about getting in tune with themselves. And here's another thing. When people are doing that, when they're going from overt to covert, because they still haven't linked up how to keep themselves safe, what they tend to do is they spend all of their time focusing on trying to better understand narcissism or sociopathy, thinking if I can just learn enough about this, I'll be able to keep myself safe. And that kind of information, it's great to a point. It really shows you this is how exploitative and manipulative and just evil some of this behavior can really be. But what will keep you safe is getting in tune with yourself, of really getting grounded in those sensations of when something feels off, it's generally off, and it's okay for you to leave. Don't get hung up on trying to, being concerned that you're being rude or that you're being hypervigilant or all of these things. Like, it's really rediscovering your own emotions and trusting your own experiences and your own perceptions of reality. Like, if something is not comfortable for you, then it's not comfortable. It doesn't matter if anybody else agrees, and comfortable people in comfortable situations, they feel comfortable. They don't leave you feeling like a sheet twisting in the wind and anxious about when the next shoe going to drop. Okay. Okay, let me answer this question. Then Ricky, that's a great question I'm going to get to here in a second. Okay, so this is from Mo, who says, "Hey, Dana, I'm still deluded about my abuser. Part of me still wants to go back after therapy to see what happens and to get some closure and see the truth." Okay. Again, I think this is pretty common. And because there is so much confusion that tends to be involved with abuse, that there's, for a lot of, I would say the vast majority, if not all, targets of abuse start going through this introspection time. Is it me? Is it them? Is this really a problem? Is this as big of a problem? Could they possibly change? What are they really up to? There's so many unanswered questions there. And there's so much doubt. And then if you've been manipulated and they've been blaming you, it's just this added layer of confusion and, crazy making. So it can take a little while to let all that settle down. The needing the closure part of that all and seeing the truth. One of the things I would just encourage you is to realize that you know enough. And that whatever closure that you're seeking, you are not going to get from them. Seeking closure from them is only going to bring you pain. Seeing more of the truth is only going to bring you pain. If somebody treats you in a way that's lacking in dignity and respect, that's it. That's all. That's enough. That's enough. And I know it can feel like you want to know everything, but like I said, it's only ever going to be the tip of the iceberg, especially if you're dealing with a pathological liar. They could even tell you things that are not true, just intentionally to hurt you. So you can't trust anything that they say. So I would encourage you to give yourself closure. And speaking of which, I had mentioned this to this gal, Irish gal, a while ago, a year or 2 years ago. And she emailed me, "Irish gal, I'm sorry, I need to email you back. I totally forgot until just this moment." But one of the suggestions I had for her, because she was in this kind of a similar situation, needing closure, not knowing how to get it, was to gather up, to write a letter, to your ex, letting him know everything. You just pour your heart into that, all of your emotions, that you're angry, that it's not fair, that you're hurt, that this is ridiculous, and you just let it all out. And you're not going to mail that letter, okay? You're going to hold on to that and gather up any items around the house that remind you of him, that you're okay with getting rid of, and have some friends over or people in your support system. And if you live in an area where you can have a fire, burn all of that. And, obviously in a fire pit, in a fireplace, in a safe way. But it's kind of this cleansing experience where you're you're visually seeing all of this, the ending of all of this. And some other things that you can do too, that alone is really cathartic, and it's just so wonderful. It's just so, it does provide a lot of closure, and it really signals to you that, okay, now you're in this next chapter of your life. These things are no longer a part of you. Something else you can do if you're still in that same space, in the same house, is to rearrange your furniture. To, if you can, paint walls. Paint, that's the cool thing with paint. It's relatively inexpensive, and it can change the whole mood of a place. So really making your space your own as much as you possibly can makes a huge, huge difference. These kinds of things. And just reminding yourself every time you start wondering, well, I wonder what else there was. I wonder, I need more evidence. And I just really, I need more. I need more pain. Keep reminding yourself, you're only going to find pain. That's all it's ever going to bring you. There is no healing with that. There is no closure. It's only pain. Sometimes that can help to keep you back on track. Okay, Ricky asks, how does one distinguish between narcissistic charm and genuine charm? Great question. Well, here's my take on it. Charm, by definition, is not real. So it's a person that's trying to finesse or flatter you. And most people, when they act charming, they have some sort of, there's a reason for it. Either that, and that might be conscious or subconscious, so, but it's not relating to another human being on an honest level. Whenever I meet a person that's overly flattering, giving me, not that this happens all the time, but like whenever it does happen, there's a few relatives I have that I'm thinking about, one in particular who does this really often. And it's her way of, she really struggles like just connecting with people in an authentic way. And so it's almost like she creates this like ingratiating behavior in order, because she just can't be sincere. It's very strange. So it's a lot of this like flattering. It's way over the top kind of stuff that it's, like, oh my God, that's too much. You know what I mean? So I guess what I'm saying is when anybody is ever being charming, I just wouldn't take that at face value. I'd smile and I'd nod and, oh, thank you so much for the compliment. And thank you. Oh, it's been so nice getting to know you. But in the back of your mind, you're realizing, okay, this is just charm. This person may be just very charming. They might be very enjoyable, but you still have healthy boundaries. You're not going to, jump into bed with them. You're not going to jump into business with them. You're not going to, entangle your life with them. So you just kind of, it's all about, sincere, authentic relationships. It truly is just about building trust, and building trust with another person takes time. And oftentimes a lot of that trust comes from conflict, and it comes from the resolution of that conflict. It comes from that sincerity. When two people are authentically present, there's going to be some disagreements. It's how they handle it that makes all the difference. So I wouldn't get so caught up in, trying to figure out, well, is this, love bombing, or is this charm, or is this sincere, or is it fake? I would just look at all of that kind of stuff as you're meeting. Somebody said this a while back, and it was so perfect. Like, you're not meeting the real them, you're meeting their representative. So true. Like, you're meeting their highest and best self, whether they're ingratiating themselves because they're manipulative and they have a hidden agenda, or because they're insecure and they're uncomfortable being themselves, or whatever it might be. None of that matters. What matters is that you realize, hey, if I want to have a sincere connection with the person, that I need to really get to know them. That all of the good time, you don't get to know another person during the good times. You really, really don't. It's, if you've ever been on a road trip with somebody, or you've ever traveled with somebody, it's those moments where you get lost. It's when the weather changes. It's when people are grumpy, that kind of stuff. That's what you really want to pay attention to. The charm, the flattery, the chemistry, all that's wonderful, but a lot of that stuff fades. Does that answer your question? Okay. Let's see here. Life after gray, that's a really valid point, says back to the overt, covert kind of flip-flop conversation. Seems like you'd be more believed with an overt abuser. No one else sees the covert. Yes. You know what's so crazy about that too is it's wild and frustrating to no end how many people don't even see the overt. So I don't know. I've thought for a while I'm still going back and forth with this because I just don't want to stir the pot, but there's quite a few clips and stuff that I see in the news and in the YouTube community and this kind of stuff where I'm like, wow, this is really insincere and not okay. And how do people like buy into this? Like the whole, well, I'll just say like the whole Daddy of Five thing when they had their channel, this husband and wife were tormenting, like psychologically and physically bullying the youngest little boy. And they thought it was hilarious. And I really don't think in their mind that they were like, we're going to abuse this kid. They just didn't have any emotional awareness of, hey, don't do that. Like, just because it's funny to you, you're not on the receiving end of it and you're not 6 years old. So it might be hilarious to you, but it's not hilarious to your son. And when their videos way over the line. And it was amazing to me how many of their followers justified their behavior and they minimized it and they just didn't see it for what it was. Like you have like hundreds of hours of footage of this kid getting abused and bullied. Like what more do you need? I don't get it. So, but yeah, I think by and large, if you're with an overt abuser, more often than not, people are going to hopefully see it, but still frustrating. Okay. Jack says, Dana, why do some people feel that autism has a connection to narcissistic personality disorder? I've been personally burnt by such an assertion, and I think people are conflating my quote unquote autistic tendencies with narcissistic fleas. I think when people make the connection between autism and narcissistic personality disorder, what they're referring to is more of that kind of disconnection, that emotional disconnection from another person. Kind of, with narcissists, it's just jaw-dropping how they don't understand how their behavior impacts others. And so I think a lot of people think, okay, well, maybe they're on the autism spectrum because they don't understand. Like they just don't understand what they're doing is inappropriate, or they're missing social cues to know that that's not appropriate. I think that's where those questions tend to come from. But it's very different. There might be some kind of social differences with people with autism, but with narcissism, it's ego-based. It's not brain-based. So it's just very different. I can see why they might make that connection, but all of the other behaviors are not found within, and really even that is like not found within autism. So yeah, it's just people don't understand, and behavior that a person doesn't come across every day is just confusing. And so they don't know. And so I think how any of us, when we go about and trying to interpret something that we don't normally come across, all we have to use is our previous frame of reference and our previous experience with this kind of stuff. And so if they're not aware of, emotional or psychological abuse, or really kind of the malignant narcissism out there, it's not even a possibility. It's not even on their radar. So they're trying to take this confusing behavior that they're experiencing and trying to make sense of it based on the frame of reference that they have. But the frame of reference they have is incomplete. But yes, I can imagine the frustration for that. There's just a lot of awareness and education that needs to be done, for sure. Oh, you guys are so full of really good questions tonight. My goodness. M. Hawk says, Dana, quick question. What is considered a toxic person, and how can they affect you? And what is the difference between a narcissist and a toxic person? Well, so here's how I view a toxic person is somebody, kind of every person, every experience in life tends to either really give you energy or it drains you of energy. And when you're aware of this, and a lot of this, again, goes back to tuning into how you feel, and also tuning into your physical body, because there's physical signs that you're just being drained of energy. You're tired, you're grumpy, you look older than you are. You're sick all the time. It's just your life force is just being sucked out of you. It's a toxic person is very much like a toxic substance. If you're ingesting something that's toxic, if there's lead in your water and you're drinking that and this is toxic to you, it's going to be very much along the same. You're going to have these really negative changes, personality changes, physical changes within you. And it's the same thing with the toxic person. There's just that level, it just drains you of energy and it makes you just feel icky and sick. When you're with a person that's a nourishing person, it's the exact opposite. That gives you energy. You're excited to be around them. You leave with a smile on your face. You're energized. The conversation is good. You feel emotionally safe. You feel accepted for who you are. You feel seen. You feel validated. You feel accepted. It's the exact opposite. It's just very nourishing. So let's see. That was the first half of your question. Hold on, my phone just locked itself. Let's see. Second half is, what is the difference between a narcissist and a toxic person? I would say there is, depending on the degree of narcissism, there's a lot of overlap. So if you think about narcissism in terms of a person's self-orientation, or just a person's orientation, are they really self-focused or are they really others-focused? Extreme in either way is a problem. But when you're talking about narcissists and you're kind of getting over on that self-focus, this is when you're like, wow, I'm not being validated. I'm being continually invalidated. It's nobody, this person never asks how I'm doing. They seem indifferent. They seem cold and calloused and they don't care. And it's that kind of behavior where you just don't exist and it's all about them all of the time. That's just soul sucking. And it's very lonely because you're not there. There's not that emotional connection there. So that kind of behavior is really toxic. And a lot of, toxic people in general. Well, let me back up. This book that we're reading for book club, The Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents, it really spells out a lot of this behavior, and it can be really helpful to toxic people. I think toxic behavior is oftentimes very emotionally immature behavior. So there's not that ability to work as a team. There's not that sense of mutuality. There's not that open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication is the exact opposite. It's lying, it's manipulation, it's insincerity, it's ingratiating behavior, it's abuse of any kind. It's all kinds of this kind of stuff. And that's what's so draining, because it's all nonsensical. And especially the more aware that you become, you're kind of climbing up Maslow's pyramid, get into that self-actualized part, or at least on that road, so the more self-aware you become, you're kind of also more aware of the behaviors of other people. And that can really be a challenge. So a lot of people really struggle with, am I being too judgmental? Is this person really abusive? Are they really toxic? If I cut out every single toxic person in my life, I'd have no one left. There's kind of this part in healing where as you start growing and changing, so will everything else in your life. And if you think about other major life stages that you've gone through, it's the same, right? Things change. Your friend group changes when you graduate from high school. There's the group that is going to go on the same path, whatever that path might be. Some go join the military, some go to college, some go into family business, or they go into like a vocational school. Things change, and then everybody starts relating to other people based on the commonalities that they have. And it's the same thing with personal growth. Like when you kind of get to these major milestones, all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, I really don't have that much in common with a lot of other people anymore, or the people that I used to have things in common with, I should say. And what once felt normal or non-problematic, all of a sudden starts kind of feeling toxic. It starts like, it feels at first like you're walking around in shoes that are about 2 sizes too small. That's how it starts off. And then you start to realize, I just don't have enough in common, and this is really draining for me. And it's just not nourishing. There's just nothing there for me. Doesn't mean that they're even necessarily bad people. It's just not for you anymore. And so growing and changing, life changes, always a challenge. Okay, let's see. Okay, Yeah, and Mars says, and so does Grace, I feel like there's hardly anyone else after I kicked out all the people with abusive behavior out of my life. I feel more at peace, but lonely. And Grace says, I did cut everyone out, at least most of them, and it's tough. And so let's talk about that a little bit too. There is that point, right? When you start waking up to problematic behavior and you're like, oh my gosh, I thought it was just this one person in my life. No, it's not. Matter of fact, I'm seeing this stuff everywhere. And you're just becoming more aware. It's just now on your radar is what it is. Like you just see this stuff for what it is instead of glossing over it. And it's hard. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that can be a really lonely time, especially if other people around you don't see it. So, and oftentimes a person does kind of need to do this house cleaning where you're like, boy, I've been hanging on to friendships and family relationships. Like this stuff is not nourishing at all. In fact, this stuff is downright toxic. It's draining and it's exhausting and it's soul sucking. And I've only been doing it because I figured I had to because they're family, or I had to because I've been, friends with this person for 20 years. And you start realizing, oh my gosh, I don't have to do any of this. Like I can choose how to invest my energy and, change things up. And so then there's kind of this shaking up period in a person's life when they just shuffling, everything's just starts shuffling around. The people in their inner circle, they start realizing that they have different circles. It's not just either your inner circle or a total stranger. You've got different circles for different people. I think that's a big stage too, is understanding that. That can take a lot of the pressure off. because who's going to be in your inner circle? That's a really sacred space, and seats in your inner circle are going to be, or at least they should be, kind of hard won. And they're going to be earned with good behavior, nourishing, supportive, validating behavior over a consistent period of time. These are emotionally safe people that you're moving into your inner circle. And so then you have more like your acquaintance circle, you have your work buddy circle, you have your family circle. Some people in your family might even be in your inner circle, but maybe a lot of them are just in that outer family circle ring. And that's okay. So when a person gets to that stage, then they realize, oh my gosh, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It doesn't have to be, these people are, and this is a boundary thing. And there's so much about this. We talk about kind of developing your sea legs and getting a feel for all of this. And this is very much part of it. And so when you're cultivating healthy boundaries and you realize, okay, there's different boundaries for different groups of people, and this is appropriate, then kind of the next step in all of that is learning how to be assertive and to really make your boundaries known. So for a lot of us, this is a very new skill that we have to learn. But the good thing is, once you're in tune enough with yourself and hey man, this nourishes me and this drains me. And you know what? I am in charge of my life, and I'm not going to do things out of fear, obligation, or guilt. I'm going to do things because I enjoy doing them. I either enjoy doing them in the short term or I enjoy the results in the long term. There's some sort of benefit, right? It's just, it's nourishing for you. So once your standards are raised, where you're like, yeah, I really want to have peace in my life, and I really want to have people. My new baseline is I will be treated with dignity and respect. Period. End of story. If anybody doesn't do that, then, and if it's egregious, treating you with disdain, contempt, hostility, aggression, then they're gone. If it's a squabble between you and a friend that that normally they're emotionally safe, and this is something that you want to work out, then this is when you're going to be assertive. So your standards, your boundaries follow your standards. Your boundaries are your bodyguards of your standards. So once you're in tune with yourself, a lot of this stuff, it might sound really complicated. Like, oh my gosh, I've got so many things to hold in my head and try to figure out. But the more you're doing this and you're living this and you're in tune with your standards and your boundaries and your deal breakers, and you're learning how to be assertive, because assertiveness goes hand in hand with authenticity. It's just, and once you start doing that more and more, it just becomes easier and easier because you just keep having more and more peace in your life. And, and then you become more okay with it because you're validating yourself. You're not looking for other people to validate you. It's really going to freak a lot of people out when you kind of start getting to that point. But your life is just, it's so much easier. And you take stuff, you see other people's baggage and drama as their stuff. You don't take it on, and it's just a game. It's an absolute game changer. So yes, there's that part where people tend to do that whole house cleaning, but then as they move forward and they're getting to different people in their life, they're relating to these newer people in a very different way. And you're going to be relating to the people that you've kept in your life also in a very different way. And that's exciting. Terrifying at times, but exciting. Yes, Mo says, own your peace. I love that. And there's two Mo's. And then Mo Beauty Goddess says, I have so much peace now and no one will take it away again. Yes, I love that. Let's see. Oh, that's a good one. Bonnie says, trade the no respect that narcissists give to you and replace it with self-respect. Yes, well said. I think you guys probably remember, but if you're new here, I'm telling this for you. But back when I was going through everything, I had a friend of mine who gave me this little flip book, and it was kind of inspirational quotes and these kinds of things. It was very nice. And I came across the quote from Joseph Campbell, which says, "Follow your bliss." And I remember standing in my kitchen, staring at that quote, thinking, I did that, and look where I am. And I was very confused by that advice of, well, how do I, that almost got me killed. So how do I reinterpret that? Like, what do I do with this? And then it dawned on me, it's follow your bliss is important, but never at the expense of sacrificing your peace. So if something really excites you, you're like, man, I really want to start this new business, or, go on that 5th date with this person, or get married, or whatever it might be, but you have no peace about it. There's something that your brain is trying to tell you. And when we do get peace, when you have all of the questions answered, when things make sense, you have a very easy answer. It's generally an easy yes. It's the confused mind that is the anxious mind. So follow your bliss, but not at the expense of following your peace. And if you're in doubt, just start following your peace. And then in time, when you get more in tune with how being safe and secure and calm feels, then you'll be able to get to that place where what brings you bliss, what really gives you that, Marie Kondo would say, what sparks joy, becomes more apparent for you. Yes. Sunflower 2 says, it's all about undoing your entire lifetime of conditioning and false messages, turning it upside down, and those are the real rules of life. Start here, learn the rules, accept them, and go forward. Yes, and Bonnie says, making room for good people to enter your life. Crowding out the narcissists is necessary. Yes, and that's the cool thing with that is it's so much easier to start filling up your kind of sphere of influence, or like your support system. It's so much easier to let the kind of the wrong people, I guess, the wrong people or the wrong relationships. It's easier to let the wrong relationships go when you're getting, like, when you've got new relationships that are more in alignment with who you are at this stage in your life. It's sort of like, you probably heard me talk about the comparison. It's like having a refrigerator full of rotten food, but then not knowing when you're going to be able to go grocery shopping again. And so you're kind of like, oh, I don't know if I really want, I don't know if I really want to throw everything out, because I'm not going to have anything to eat. And so then you're starting to kind of bargain with yourself. Like, well, is that cheese really that bad? Like, I could cut off quite a bit of that mold and still be fine. I could still make one more sandwich out of that. Or, I bet that, that might just be on the line of food poisoning, but I don't have the energy to go grocery shopping right now. So do you know what I'm saying? Like, you start rationalizing with yourself, and that can be a problem, because it really can make you sick. It's a lot easier to get rid of all of the stuff that's just rotten, that it's just time to go, if you have, a car full of groceries. And it's the same thing. And that sounds so horrible, I know, but it's the same thing with different people in your life. It's a lot easier to let go of friendships and relationships that you're just not in alignment anymore. You've outgrown them. Maybe you're just not connecting with them. They don't even have to be bad or wrong. There's just not that connection anymore. It's a lot easier to let them go when you're simultaneously like building up a support system, and you're meeting new people, and there's, other options there. Agatha was saying about the follow your peace, follow your bliss thing. And she says, if you don't know, then just stay home and read a book. And I actually think that is really fantastic advice. Sometimes we do just have to bench ourselves and just be like, you know what? And that's okay. That's okay. I really think that's a big part of it. Abuse, this kind of stuff, it can feel like a person takes a magnet to your internal compass, and it just leaves a person completely just discombobulated, and they do not know what end is up. They don't know how to trust. They don't know who to trust. They don't know, you're feeling hypervigilant about everything. Your emotions are all over the place. You're just completely dysregulated. And it's okay. It's okay to not know. It's okay. That the feeling that way is often a really big part of it. And it's okay just to take a break and be like, you know what? I'm just going to bench myself right now. I'm not going to make any major life decisions. I'm not going to get involved in it. I'm not going to start dating again. I'm not going to, sell my house. I'm not going to quit my job. I'm just going to just stay in a little holding pattern for at least the next 3 months and just breathe and just get grounded and get comfortable. And sometimes it takes longer for people. Sometimes it might take 6 months or a year, and that's okay. The whole goal here is it's important that you are able to get to that place where you realize what is for you and what isn't for you, and how that feels. Your emotion, I know that might sound really kind of fluffy for a lot of people, but your emotions are there's such a huge guidance system that we have, and to totally discount them is a huge mistake. So really getting in tune with them, it'll let you know so much that's going on with everything. They're kind of just like the different lights that go off in your car, the check engine light and the oil light and this, that, and the other. And when stuff starts catching your attention, realizing, okay, it's there for a reason. Like, what does this mean? So kind of off topic, but I was thinking about this the other day. Well, I guess it was yesterday. Gosh, I get in such a time warp. We were talking about advice that we all get. And Angie and I were talking about our frustration with kind of this well-intended bad advice that we all get. And it's easy to get kind of sucked into. And we were saying one of the challenges with this is when people on the surface, a lot of this advice can really seem like a good advice, or sometimes it can seem kind of questionable, but boy, that person really seems to know what they're talking about. And so it can be easy to get kind of pushed into or feel obligated to go in a certain direction. And so I had made the comment, I think it's really important with every single piece of advice that you get from anybody it's always got to be within that context of your healthy boundaries. And so the other day I was thinking, it's sort of like, did you guys ever do this thing when you were, I don't know, in high school or whatever, with fortune cookies, where you would add in bed, the words in bed after every fortune? So it would say something like, I've got a fortune cookie right here. All personal beliefs, wait, hold on. Let me just read it to you. All personal breakthroughs begin with a change in beliefs in bed. So that would be how you would change that. So I was thinking, it's like that what you do with the fortune cookie is kind of what you do with advice, except instead of adding in bed, you add with healthy boundaries. So like you just tack that on to every single thing that anybody ever says in regards to giving you advice in your life, and that'll send you in a better direction. So James says, in high school, I still do it. Don't judge. Oh yeah, we still do too. It never gets old. I don't know why it doesn't. Still funny 20 years later. Let's see here. Miss Ashley D says, how do you start reprogramming yourself? I feel so stripped down. That is a really, gosh, where to start? I don't know. I would be curious to know, what do you guys think in the chat? Where would you recommend a person start with this, with truly kind of reprogramming themselves? I'll give you my 2 cents, but I'll be curious to hear from other people too. I think it depends on where you are in your understanding of all of this. For most people, there's that need at first for clarity and validation because they've been confused and invalidated for so long. So at that initial stage in healing, a lot of kind of information gathering, learning about manipulation, abuse, kind of narcissism, sociopathy, this kind of stuff can be helpful. I would say the reprogramming yourself it tends to be kind of a little bit down the road. So if you are at that place where you're like, okay, I feel like I understand manipulation and abuse and the power and control and the kind of the whole abuser's mindset, I've gotten my fill of that. Now I'm ready to rebuild my life and I'm ready to make my life work. The reprogramming yourself. There's just so many things. Learning to validate yourself is a big one. Learning to tune in to your emotions is a very big one. Getting to the point where you understand when you're mistreated is a big one. Learning about assertive communication is helpful. And I think it can also be helpful to there's a lot of benefit and importance for a person to create a compelling vision to steer into. So kind of getting clear on, okay, what do you want in your life? And having that direction, this is the direction that I'm going to be heading. You don't have to know how to get there right now, but just setting that course of what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of life do you want to have? What kind of friends do you want to have? Like these really kind of getting clear about all of the different big pieces in your life. Let's see. I'm curious to see clear intentions. Kim says, yeah, clear intentions. That's a big one. And yeah, Agatha says that she's been abused since the age of 3. So instead of reprogramming, she just had to start creating a whole new her, building new without previous blueprints. She started validating what she wanted. That's a big, yes, that's huge. And then MFA says learning to trust your gut again. And I really view this time when people kind of wash up on our shores, so to speak, and they arrive in the chat or they arrive at these different YouTube channels and they feel exactly like you feel. They just feel so stripped down and eroded. Their sense of self is just gone. To me, this is just it's going to sound weird. It's such a sacred time because you really are at this very unique place in life that can be so incredibly powerful. When you have your whole world blown apart like this, the upside to that is that now you get to go about reconstructing your life brick by brick, but you get to examine every single brick that you're rebuilding with. So like what Agatha was saying she didn't, like there was no previous self there that she really wanted to go back to. So she had the added challenge of starting completely over. But even still, even with her experiences in that added challenge, like no matter where you are in this, it's just so cool because you can choose, like you're questioning everything, which I know can feel really overwhelming, but it's so powerful to question who are you at this chapter in your life? And like, what are your beliefs and what are your likes and what are your dislikes? And what are some things, beliefs perhaps that you just accepted as a child and that you never thought to question. And now that you're at this place, you're like, well, gosh, do these bricks still even fit? I don't know if they do. And so you're consciously reassembling your life piece by piece. And it truly is piece by piece. This is not an overnight project, but I think if you set your North Star to really valuing making your safety and sanity a top priority. So that's always going to be the direction you head in, is keeping your safety and sanity a priority. If something compromises either one of those, then you're kind of getting off the trail. So moving in that direction. And then like, I think Marie Kondo just sums it up perfectly, kind of finding what sparks joy in you. This might seem like a very kind of trite thing to say, but it truly is so powerful. I have talked before about one of the things that I did. I was so out of tune. I was never in tune with who I was. And I didn't realize that was the case until, I don't know, until after all of this happened to me, for sure. But it might have even been like after that. But one of the earlier steps in getting in tune with myself was I came across this quote, and it's so weird. I wrote it, but I don't think I came up with it, but I can't figure out where it came from. And that's just weird in and of itself. But the whole thing was kind of examining on a scale of like 0 to 10. Okay. 5 being you're lukewarm, 0 being ice cold, 10 being, yeah, that's it. Like you're totally juiced. Examining things in your everything in your life, your friendships, your car, your environment, your job, your clothes, all of this kind of stuff. Thinking about it on terms of that scale and just kind of mentally making a note of where along that continuum are different things and then why. And it can help to start with things that you're not emotionally invested in. Like maybe your clothes or your dishes in your kitchen, getting in tune with that, getting re-in tune with like your thoughts and your opinions and your feelings and your wants and your needs and what it feels like when something really juices you, even at a small degree. I've used the example oftentimes. This is a small example. Okay. I love Pilot pens, Pilot G207. Love these pens so very much. And this was one of my realizations from doing that exercise is I don't like regular ballpoint pens at all. It's like the equivalent of like nails on a chalkboard for me. I don't like writing with them. And so then I realized, well, you know what? Why not? Like I can spend the $10 and get a packet of these pens and really enjoy writing. And so I made that shift. And then you start continually kind of making these shifts and then doing more of what juices you and more of what feels good. And the gift of this at the end is the more you get used to what it feels like to just have little things in your life that you enjoy, things that spark joy, things that you just, that you really enjoy, the less you're going to want to go towards anything that doesn't feel that way. So this is kind of an exercise to help you really get in balance, reconnect with who you are, and then start moving forward and really creating this new you, because your inner self knows. Your inner self always knows what's nourishing for you, even though it might feel confusing now, but it's true. Miss Lady Girl says, I'm rereading my journal and the attraction of crumbs. Why? Well, I think for a lot of us, the attraction of, it's not necessarily the attraction of crumbs. It's more that it's the fear of not getting anything more substantial. So crumbs is something, right? And so if we grew up in a home, let's say, that was less than nurturing, if we're settling for emotional crumbs, or I guess that's probably the big one for most people, emotional crumbs. We had distant parents. We just didn't really get that connection. All we knew was we grew up with crumbs. Maybe we had really low self-esteem, and we just kind of felt like we weren't worth anything more than that. Or maybe we got the messages as a child growing up of, well, you should be glad that you're getting this. It's more than I got. These kind of little subtle, those kind of comments are really invalidating and can be really subtle and stealthy and do a lot of damage, even if the person doesn't mean them to. So we also tend to settle for crumbs. So let's say, for example, that none of what I just mentioned applies to a person. They had a really fantastic childhood. They had warm, loving parents. They have wonderful self-esteem. They've never settled for crumbs. And then all of a sudden they found themselves in a relationship like this. It might be at that point that they were lonely. That's generally it. If it's later on in life, it's generally that they were lonely and didn't realize it. That they have, narcissists tend to come into our life when we have a vulnerability that we're not aware of, because they exploit it. And again, normal, decent people don't have this stuff on their radar. Like, you really have to just kind of live it to realize that it's out there and to have it on your radar. So, but there's generally some sort of unexamined vulnerability that's driving our behavior. Like I said, it's either kind of the lack of closeness as a child with your parents or primary caregivers. It was potentially low self-esteem. It's thinking that you're thinking that, well, hey, nobody's perfect. I should just be glad for whatever I get, or loneliness later on in life, or these kinds of things. And the challenge too is sometimes crumbs, when you're dealing with an abusive person, or even just emotionally distant person, at first they might not come across like that. They might come across like you have this amazing chemistry and they're really engaging and there's this great connection. And then slowly over time, they just start to withdraw. And then all they have to give you is crumbs. And then that can be confusing. And then what happens, it's the whole kind of intermittent reinforcement, where now you've got this person working overtime, trying to figure out, well, what do I need to do in order to get more crumbs? And like, it's there's nothing you or I can do. It's them. Like, some people just don't have that emotional capacity or a desire to be in a connected relationship. So there's just, like I said, this stuff's not taught, and I think everybody here had to kind of figure this out the hard way. And so I guess please don't think that, I think it's easy to think, oh boy, there's something just really profoundly wrong with me. Like, boy, my childhood really messed me up, and that's how this kind of stuff happened to me. Anybody can get tangled up with a narcissist or an emotional manipulator. This stuff's not taught. And it because it's not taught, it's hard to comprehend unless you've lived it. So, when you go through it and you're rebuilding your life and you're examining all of these things that you never really knew to examine, and you're gaining all of this self-awareness, you're really just, you're so ahead of the game. Like, you're so much more self-actualized and just totally a different, more empowered person. Okay, let's see. Yeah, Kim says, yeah, Dana, beyond comprehension. It truly, truly is. Okay, let's see here. Let me scroll up. Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, Rich says, yeah, Stockholm syndrome, cycle of abuse, crumbs, good stuff, and then emotional attacks. Yep. It's those highs and lows. Somebody had said real quick the other day in this support group about they were really upset because they'd been out of this abusive relationship for a while, but they still kept thinking about different ways, different things that they could have said in a conversation, or different events and how they could have replayed them a different way, and just kind of this rehashing of all of these events. And they were really upset about this because they're like, I just want to be over this. I don't want to think about him. Like, I'm done. I don't care. I don't, but why can't I just turn my brain off? And, I view it this way. It's sort of like if a child gets bullied in school, that event, being abused, bullied, whatever you want to call it, it's traumatic. And it's stuff that people remember. And whenever we are violated like that and bullied and mistreated like that, there's going to be anger. And that's appropriate. It's appropriate anger. It's appropriate to feel really angry if you've been violated in some way. And so all of this kind of thinking about them, this does tend to kind of settle down in time, but it doesn't mean that you're still trauma bonded to them. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It doesn't mean that there's a psychic connection that you have with them. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means that you went through something traumatic. Your brain is trying to process it. Odds are it's something unlike anything you've ever experienced before. And there's a lot of pieces missing. So it's hard to get closure. It's hard to kind of just let that rest. So it's, I guess, just if anybody's struggling with that, just kind of know that. Okay, let me scroll up here. Erica, that's interesting, says, does what drives behavior really matter? The result is the same, pain and abuse. Yes, if we are talking in terms of abuse, then yeah, it doesn't, like, I guess it depends on where a person is. Like, if you're a counselor, if you're trying to work with people and trying to impact self-awareness and behavior change, that's one thing. But I think for us being on the receiving end of this stuff, abuse is abuse, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they had a bad day, a bad childhood, if they're stressed out, any of that kind of stuff. It's just not okay for a person to treat you like that. Period. End of story. And it's incredibly problematic because most people, there's something profoundly dysfunctional with the person if they're not aware by the time that they're 7, especially by the time that they're an adult, that you can't treat other people like that. They're a million miles away from being able to be in a healthy, happy, well-adjusted, authentic relationship. Like, they've got a lot of stuff that they need to unpack and untangle, and odds are that if they lack that insight and self-awareness that they have a problem, then they never will. So it's yeah. Okay, let's see. Agatha says, hold on, why we give so much more attention to narcissism than to our healing And what do you think helps to break that pattern of us trying to understand them instead of us trying to love ourselves? Why do we give so much more attention to narcissism than to our healing? Well, okay, let me chunk this down into a few different questions. I think one of the main reasons that people give more attention to narcissism than to our healing is because our brains are wired to understand, to keep us safe, like I was saying earlier. And if something causes us pain, your brain needs to understand that so it can avoid it. So there's kind of this neurological component at work where we're focused on, I've got to understand what caused me pain so this doesn't happen again. That's a big part of it. I think the second part of it is people think that if they understand narcissism, then that will help them heal. And there is some truth to that. I don't think that, because there's not a very clear roadmap to healing. And so even among like mental health clinicians, this is not understood to the level that it really needs to be on, across the globe. So it's very difficult for a survivor to get out of this and to get the help that they need. So it's, so I think even there's a lot of confusion about what healing is for a lot of people. A lot of people, and this goes back to like their focus on narcissism. I think one of the early stages in healing or thinking about healing is thinking that healing means going back to the way that they were. And so that's a mirage, and that gets people stuck off in the bushes. And so then they feel really bitter and jaded and cheated when they're doing all these things to try to get back to the way that they were. And that, as we all know, like growth is always about moving forward. It's never about going back to the way we were. And life is all about growth. So kind of understanding what healing is and what healing isn't is an important point. That's, it's not very clear for a lot of people. And then just, again, just not knowing, like, what does healing mean? Are we talking about kind of PTSD kind of stuff, like nightmares and kind of hypervigilance and really struggling with distrusting other people? Or are we talking more about boundaries and standards and deal breakers and self-worth and self-esteem and turning inward and really understanding yourself? And here's the other, there's so many challenges. To have this conversation, this kind of later stage in healing conversation with a person who's fresh out, they're going to look at you like you're from Mars. So if you're talking to them, and they might even want to just physically attack you, because for a person who's been victimized, they've been victimized, and that needs to be validated. And that's okay. It's okay to identify as a victim if you've been victimized. Like, society is often uncomfortable with that, but it's appropriate. Like, that's what that term means. So there's that stage in healing where a person their pain is so raw that they just need to kind of be there and regroup and be validated and understand that, yes, you're going to have a wide mix of emotions, and every single one of those emotions is completely appropriate and very normal. And that's okay. It's okay to miss them. It's okay to hate them. It's okay to love them. It's okay to cry. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to not miss them. It's okay to, however you're feeling, it's just your own unique experience. So talking to a person who's fresh out about self-esteem and kind of these more like introspective kind of things, boundaries and standards and deal breakers, they're going to be like, what on earth are you talking about? My issue is my ex is a complete psychopath and tried to kill me. That's my issue. I don't have any issues. So there's this disconnect. And of course, I'm not saying that they do have any issues and that's why this happened to them, but all of these different stages in self-awareness that tend to kind of coincide with healing are very important, because like I keep saying, this stuff isn't taught. And so I have yet to meet another person, myself included, who really fully understood all of this stuff. Like it takes it, even when you're looking for it, it takes a very long time. I think the benefit to these support groups and these chats and things like this is it helps to shorten that learning curve, because people have already been there, done that, and we tend to have very similar questions, and it's very similar terrain. Like we can kind of tell, okay, I get what you're thinking about that. I can kind of see the look on your face. I can see what's going to trip you up and it's going to wind you off in the bushes. Like, let me just forewarn you of these different kind of traps along the way. So it's just communication and understanding and helping to draw like a straight line, as straight of a line as you can for a person who's looking to heal. Because again, like you're confused, just, it's so, God, it's exhausting for me to even think about it. This, a person's fresh out, they're confused, they're scared, they're overwhelmed, and now they have to try to figure out how to heal. It's like, what? And in your spare time, rebuild your life. It's so much. So that's why, just taking it in small chunks really helps. Okay, there was another, and what do I think would break the pattern of trying to understand them instead of trying to love us? I think if there was more of like a literal roadmap, like literal, like if I were to draw something out and show like these are the different, these tend to be the stages. Your map may vary, okay? But by and large, this is what the vast majority of people tend to experience. And maybe I should just take the time to do that and make like it would be very big infographic of my understanding of the different stages of healing and what everything looks like for a person. Because I think just to lay that out for a person can be helpful. There is life after this. Here's everything that I have learned along the way, and here's everything that so many other tens of thousands of other people have learned too. I think that's one of the really cool things about the internet is when, and also the benefit of support groups. I am such a fan of that. Even if you're in therapy or you're doing one-on-one stuff with a life coach, getting into a support group where there's multiple people it can really accelerate a person's understanding, because it's the same questions. It's the same. Everybody that's gone through this we're all telling different versions of the same story. And so when you see that reflected back at you and the experiences of other people, it's just jaw-dropping, because you're like, wow, I thought this was really wild, and I was unique in this, and oh my God, what a thank goodness. I mean, not that you would want, we joke, it's like the club that nobody wants to belong to, but we're glad there's so many members, kind of a thing. And there's so much healing that can come from that. And then when you see other people's experiences. So I guess to answer your question, what do I think would help? That validation and understanding component is key. That the knowledge piece, learning the terminology of the stuff, gaslighting, projection, triangulation, silent treatment, cycle of abuse, devalue, discard, love bombing, hoovering, all of this kind of stuff. Once a person has the words for it, then their experience starts to make sense. That's so that I don't think there's that just needs to be honored and has to be a part of the healing. But then down the road, letting people know that, hey, this isn't it. Like there's more to it. And the next piece of the puzzle is going to be turning inward. And then the challenge with that is having people not get defensive. And again, I use my own experience as kind of a gauge for this. It took me probably a good, I don't know, how far out am I? Probably about 10 years now. God, that's crazy. Probably a good 6 years, 7 years before I had that realization. And the only way that I had that realization was I had this YouTube channel and I was doing all my videos where I was talking about stuff, and I was getting comments from people, and I didn't know what they meant because they kept talking about kind of certain things with codependency and boundaries and this kind of stuff. And I would get really defensive and angry because I was like, this has nothing to do with that. Like it's because it feels like a hit and run accident when you get tangled up with these people. Like you just don't see it coming. And so I don't know. It's just these doors open along this path. It's weird. But I think if knowing that, anticipating people are going to get defensive about this, and to not get hung up on the terminology, like nobody has to identify as a codependent. Nobody has to identify as any of that, but squeezing out what is beneficial in all of these things, because we all grow up in a dysfunctional society. No matter what society you live in, I guarantee you it's dysfunctional to some degree. This stuff isn't taught. So examining all of this is a really big key component in order to make your life actually work, and to have it work with intention and purpose. Because sometimes people, they have the results, they seem to have everything, they have a great marriage, they have a great business, they have whatever. And sometimes it's all just dumb luck. And then down the road, something happens and then everything just falls apart because it was never built on a solid foundation to begin with. It was just built on luck. And we don't want to have major decisions based on a crapshoot like that. Like there really needs to be a solid foundation there. So, okay, sorry. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so let's see here. Let me scroll up and get some more of these questions. Let's Be Real says, do you know what the drama triangle is? Yes. So drama triangle is, it's a triangle. So it's 3 sides, and it's at each point you have, or I guess each side, you have victim, rescuer, persecutor. And when a person is in this drama triangle, they're playing one of 3 roles, but that role can shift. So this basically the triangle, the Bermuda Triangle of dysfunction is what the drama triangle is, okay? Bermuda Triangle of dysfunction. So if you find yourself playing one of these roles or involved with one of these roles, right? Like there's a problem. So it's generally it's an expectations issue, it's a locus of control issue, and it's a boundary issue. So you have the victim who feels, for whatever reason, completely unable to save themselves. Okay, that's just bear with me here. So, because obviously, like there's situational stuff that like people really do need help, right? Okay, so I'm not saying that. I'm just don't read anything into that. Okay, so like the victim role. If a person has an external locus of control. So let's talk about that real quick. You can either have an internal locus of control or an external locus of control. And that means, where is that control placed? If it's internal, then a person's like, hey, you know what? I can do this. I can impact change in my life. That control comes from within. That tends to go with the person, by and large, that has healthy self-esteem. They have a good, solid self-worth. They have kind of the past experience of being able to have some sort of control in their life. They've been able to set goals and achieve them. They've been able to, there has to be like a certain degree, I think, of like safety and security in order for a person to develop that internal locus of control. You could probably even say that can really start in like early childhood. So actually, yeah, the book that we were just reading, I think there was a part in there about that. Like, if a child grows up in their, kind of this secure attachment style, then they have that. It's kind of this inbred quality of like, yeah, why not me? Why not now? Like, I can do this. Versus children that have like anxious or avoidant attachment challenges, they don't tend to have that. So they tend to feel kind of powerless or anxious about their environment. And if they are feeling powerless, it's more of the attitude of, why me? Why do these things keep happening to me? They don't understand their power in their life. So shifting that, just sometimes even just understanding that of, oh my gosh, I didn't realize this power was outside of me, is a big one. So that's a big way to get a person to start shifting out of that perpetual victim role, especially if they're always in that victim role. Where, because if that almost sounds so blaming, and I don't mean it to be at all, because if a person has grown up like that and they have just been powerless their whole life, they've lived a life of nothing but abuse, it would make sense that they would have that worldview. So, but yes, okay, so then they are in this victim role. Then you have the rescuer, who is really kind of sinking themselves to save other people. Boundaries are really blurred. They're generally they're generally either rescuing the persecutor or they're rescuing the victim. And then you have the persecutor, who is kind of blaming other people. They're kind of sometimes the instigator, these kinds of things. And so around and around and around the circle, we all go until we realize, oh my gosh, we're in the Bermuda Triangle, I want out. And really the way out is through getting real functional expectations, functional boundaries, and an empowered locus of control. Like, that breaks the cage, all of that stuff. So, but the challenge is when you break that and you're now no longer running laps in this triangle, depending on the family dynamic, okay, then there might be somebody else that fills that role. Or there might be multiple people in the family that are filling this role. And again, we can all switch. Sometimes a person might be a victim. Sometimes they might be a rescuer. Sometimes they might be a persecutor. Like, you see kind of this stuff in reactive abuse. And then they feel guilty because, oh my gosh, I just totally verbally attacked, my mother, because I had all this pent up aggression because she was the persecutor for so long and I was the victim. And now I'm the persecutor and she's the victim. And you know what I mean? So you're just swapping roles. But it can be very difficult, because once you see this stuff for what it is and how dysfunctional it is, and it just there's nothing there. Like, there's no authentic interaction with people, and there's no peace in that, and it's just chaos. Stepping away from that can be really difficult. It can be really difficult to not slide into the rescuer role and think, oh boy, if they only know what I know, like, I'm just going to go in there and I'm just going to set them all straight. I'm going to enlighten them. Right. And then that goes over like a lead balloon. And then you get sucked back into the drama triangle. So it can be It's interesting kind of way to think about all of this. Okay, so M Hawk says something about Ricky. Let's get Ricky's question to Dana. So let's see, what is Ricky's question? Let me scroll up. Let me see if I can find this question. I'm going to get some more of my fruit punch lip gloss while I'm trying to find it. Seriously, this is so good. What was that fruit punch called? Was it just Gatorade? Was it fruit punch Gatorade? I don't think it was. I want to go get some of that. They're so good. That stuff is probably so bad for you. Not probably, it is. It tastes so good. Okay, let's see. Ricky. Oh, is that the question? That's an interesting one. Ricky asks, is there any relation between narcissism and witchcraft? Is that the question that we're talking about? Okay, that is the question. Real quick, Karen asked me, what brand is this? It is Lipalicious. And I have no idea where I got this. It's way old, but amazing. So, okay, is there any relation between narcissism and witchcraft? That's a really big question. I think it depends on a person's understanding of witchcraft is part of that. I think the vast majority of kind of pagan, the pagan community, it's not about evil or selfishness at all. It's the exact opposite. It's really about kind of what you put out, you get back. And, just connecting with the earth in a very different way. I think witchcraft tends to really kind of I think it's had a bad rap for a long time because it's very different. It's not the evil thing. I'm sure that there are sects that are like anything, right? That are really dark and have kind of this dark, dark intentions there. But yeah. So that kind of stuff. I mean, if we're talking more along the lines of like dark intention kind of stuff, what I think most people would consider like Satanism, like on that kind of side of the spectrum, but again, I mean, if we're talking about the true, like the more, like the less sensationalized view of Satanism, because I fall down holes in YouTube. This is how I know this, if anybody's wondering. I watch all kinds of stuff you would not even believe. So like Satanism, it's more about this kind of I would say very selfish. It's a very selfish belief system. It's not, from my understanding, it's not even about like the devil. It's more about complete like autonomy and but still it doesn't resonate with me at all. Like it just has an icky dark vibe for me. So I don't think that there's really any necessarily like supernatural, if that's what we're kind of going for, like the umbrella over all of this, like supernatural term to this. To me, narcissism is more of, it's basically an unhealthy ego. This ego does not form properly. And a person gets just kind of stuck at if you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's a pyramid. And then at the base levels, you have kind of your basic physical needs, your basic emotional needs, your kind of self-esteem needs. Like the needs become more like having more to do with like self-actualization and self-awareness, and they become deeper emotional needs as a person goes up that pyramid. So the base level, food, clothing, shelter, sense of connection, safety, basic kind of stuff. And then it starts going up higher. You're talking about self-esteem, feeling good, having a purpose, and then self-actualization, becoming like the highest and greatest version of yourself possible. With narcissists, for whatever reason, they don't advance past those basic levels. It's just all it's very impulsive. It's in the moment. It's self-centered. It's all about their wants in that moment. There is no future thinking. There is no real like learning of lessons. It's just, they live moment to moment. And it's sad. Like there is no real mature connection to other people. There is no, in the book that we're reading for book club, she describes it so perfectly, talking about superficial emotions. And she said it's basically like a stone skipping across the water. And that's how their emotions are. So there's no depth to them. It's like saying, I love you. I want to get married. It's just words. It's just that stone skipping across the water. Whereas a person that has more emotional depth, those words have roots to them. Like there's depth and meaning to them. That's not just something that you throw around. So because of that, because there's so many challenges with them, they're just at that lower tier, just kind of immature. I think probably throughout time, there's a lot of different texts that talk about narcissism, and they describe it in a wide variety of ways, probably in part having to do with the time. But it's all kind of pointing to the same thing. So it's just kind of, in Buddhism, there's this talk about kind of hungry ghosts, where it's always that continual wanting and how empty of an existence that is, because there's never any contentment. You have, in Christianity, you have kind of this concept of like darkness and light. And if you think about darkness in terms of more of a deep dysfunction and a lot of really a lack of emotional awareness, a lack of self-awareness in general, you're in the dark. There's just darkness down there when a person doesn't understand themselves, they don't understand other people, they don't understand what's driving their behavior because there is no introspection. At that base level, that darkness, all there is chaos. And as you go up, when there's clarity, when that self-actualization starts, you start introspecting and examining your behavior. So I guess the point of these concepts have been around for a long time. They've been talked about in a lot of different ways. Who's to say? I mean, I will say there is a part of me that does kind of wonder how people can have such just horrific evil behavior. And it's like when a person is so wants driven, like the base of that pyramid, I mean, it's true. It's a 7 deadly sins, right? They're just operating at that level. It's almost like it's easy to open a door into an even darker place and to let something darker in. And I am not a believer in that kind of like supernatural kind of stuff. But I will say there's times where I really have reserved judgment because there's just some behavior that's so far outside the realm of like human comprehension, just evil that is just so far beyond that it almost does seem that there's some sort of other darkness at work. So yeah, Sharon says there are no limits. Yeah, there's not. And maybe that's just in the whole concept of like God and the devil, or the, if you think about God as like enlightenment and clarity, the Bible says like God is not the author of confusion. And you have like even pictures of Jesus and different angels, and they all have the halo, right? And if you think about it, it's just kind of more of, you could view that as just enlightenment. Like they're, if you take away kind of the supernatural elements of the spirituality part of it, but if you just look at it from, if they were trying to convey a message about human behavior, there's that clarity and then there's that confusion. And things start working for individuals and a society, the more they get towards that clarity. It's when things are in the dark and there's confusion that everything just starts falling apart. Let's see. Jack says, sorry, real quick. I'll be curious to see what you guys have to say about that. Any thoughts on that? And before I go on to Jack's question real quick, I will say I guess all of the different real sociopathic people I've had in my life, I did get that vibe of evil. And I don't normally get that. So I don't know. And maybe that vibe is just there because their behavior is so lacking in empathy that it's hard to process what it could be other than that. I don't know. Interesting. Okay, Jack says he was talking about borderline personality disorder earlier, and he met some people with that personality disorder, and they want their diagnosis to be less defined as a personality disorder and instead to be a trauma disorder. Yeah, I think there's a lot of overlap there. I would agree. Words can really get in the way sometimes. And the way certain things are phrased, I mean, personality disorder, oh my God, like that sounds so heavy and condemning and hopeless. And it's a personality, it's a cluster of behaviors that create disruption in a person's life, whether they realize it or not, or the lives of people around them, whether they realize it or not. But the thing is, though, if a person has that insight of, boy, you know what? Hey, this, and this is an issue in my life. If they have that awareness that there's a problem, they have that sincere, motivated drive to start working on it, then to me, I don't consider that. It might still be impacting their life, but it's not this like identity foreclosure of you can never be anything other than this. I just some of these terms I really feel can inadvertently or unintentionally push a person to suicide, because there's so much stigma around this kind of stuff, and nobody wants, I mean, my goodness, nobody wants the diagnosis of, you have a personality disorder. I mean, talk about really just kicking out the chair from under somebody. So I'm a bigger fan of talking about behavior and seeing I can't tell you how many people have come to my channel, people that were like, I really think they're like, Dana, I think I'm a narcissist and I don't want to be this way. There's something really wrong with me. And they're sincere. I mean, like, there's unless they're running some sort of game that I'm not aware of, I really feel that there's people out there that are identifying a lot of some problematic behavior, but they're motivated to change it. But then they hear about these kind of identity foreclosure terms like personality disorders, and then they just throw their hands up in the air and they just think, well, I guess I'm a lost cause. And that makes me sad, because I think more often than not, people that have behaviors like that and they're willing to work on it, it's more of like fleas, behavioral fleas than anything. So, and here's the thing too, with a lot of personality disorders is they grow out of trauma. So a lot of them, there is a large trauma component there. So, I think it was Pete Walker who talked about that. Like, if you think about, we all have these different defense mechanisms like fight, flight, freeze, and friend. And I would add to that forage too. So there's different ways that we all handle stress in our life. And if a person's undergoing stress, and that's the thing, because different people handle stress differently. Like you could have 5 different people all in the same car and they get in a car accident. You could have one that has PTSD and the other 4, let's see, one that has PTSD, they have a hard time even getting into a car. You might have one that has really bad nightmares and they're really anxious. Okay, then you have one that maybe starts drinking, and then you have one that's totally fine, and doesn't faze them at all. Like, it's strange how all the different ways we can process stuff. So this kind of stuff tends to result. So I think the thought is when a person is growing up, if they undergo some sort of stress or trauma, whatever that might, it doesn't have to be anything super major. It can really alter the way that they kind of start to grow. And attachment starts even before that. So if it's an added challenge if a child if there isn't that secure attachment there to begin with, for whatever reason. So, but yeah, so like narcissism is thought to be more of that fight defense, right? So they're, very defensive about everything. It's all about them. They have no room for anybody else. It's almost like it's survival mode. Like they are in fight mode all the time. You have, fight, flight. I would say those of us that are more on the opposite side of the spectrum, that are more others oriented to a problematic degree, our defense tends to be more the friend. So we go through life instead of being so defensive and, there's only room for me. Like with the narcissism on the opposite side of the spectrum, it's the only way that I can get my needs met is to make myself useful to you. And again, where this stuff comes from is anybody's guess. But some combination of nature and nurture. And then you have fight, flight, and freeze. And some of this stuff you could have different like avoidant disorders. You could have the I guess that would be the freeze. I can't think of a freeze right now, but you'd have these different disorders. So I think there is some truth in that that's how this stuff kind of just starts. And then because it's not really talked about and it's not really addressed, and it tends to not really be addressed unless a child is in a school and that school counselor or the school teacher is like, hey, there's something really wrong here. We need to get this kid in and do some assessments and try to work with the parents and the child and get them on track. But a lot of kids don't have that. And for those of us that are older who didn't even really have school counselors, definitely didn't have that. And so then as an adult, you're kind of going through life and things are kind of working and they're kind of not. And then, you start getting into therapy and then you start learning about all this. So that's a hard way to go. I just think it would be a lot easier if there was more understood about trauma and that there was more discussion about this and at starting young, because we all go through it. And that's one of my biggest gripes is we don't prepare kids, especially for life, for real life, that there is pain, that there's, there is loss, there is these things. And instead, like we wait until these things happen and then really kind of, best case scenario, people start talking to them about it. But I think more often than not, nobody does anything. And they just kind of hope that person's going to be okay. And then if that kid starts having issues, then they start talking about it. but it could be a few years before that happens. I just don't think it's the best way to go about it. But yeah, anyway, back to what you were saying about borderline personality disorder. I think that there's more likely than not that is those kind of behaviors definitely tend to stem from trauma. And hopefully the more that is understood about PTSD and trauma and how to effectively process trauma, I would be curious to see where mental health is in the next 10 or so years, and the different outcomes for kind of just behavior modification and helping people live their best life. Okay. Okay, let's see here. That's a good question, Sam. He says, do empaths and narcissists share similar wounds? Is that the common denominator? It very well could be. It tends to kind of be two sides of the same coin. So you have to both extremes. So let's say, for example, you have a real traumatizing, you have an abusive home life, okay? And you have two children in there, and you have one that is, for whatever reason, kind of goes into more of that narcissism mode where it's all about them all of the time, and they don't have healthy self-esteem. They're very defensive, all of this kind of stuff. And then you have maybe the other child, again, who it's like a mix of nature and nurture, but their way of navigating their home life is to become very in with all the other people. So they become they develop a sense of hyper empathy. So they can tell the emotional climate in a room. They can tell by different micro expressions on a person's face. They're reading body language. They're so much more in tune with everybody else in the room. They can start anticipating their needs, these kinds of things. So they become very much aware, but that kind of stuff tends to be, when you have children that grow up with parents who are alcoholics or who are struggling with addiction, who are personality disordered, who are potentially mentally ill and untreated, any type of home life where there's uncertainty present, because, our goal is to stay safe. So certainty equals safety, which is then that kind of opens up its own set of challenges if certainty is deep dysfunction. But so in order to stay safe, they have to learn how to kind of navigate that environment. Whereas that other child that goes the other way, they're just checked out. And if that's more, even if it's more like on the extreme, like the more like the sociopathy side of it, and if they just check out and they're like, I'm just going to get my wants and needs met however I want to, I don't care. And they put up walls where they just don't, to feel emotions is to feel pain. So they just have walls up. The only way that I can imagine that this must be like, because again, I think this is a subconscious thing. I don't even know if they're really even aware of it. It's got to feel like the same level of emotional distance that like a cattle rancher would have for cattle. Like they're cute, they're enjoyable, but at the end of the day, they're getting on the truck and they're not coming back. That kind of level of emotional distance. So, or if you have a cat that has kittens and then you're going to give all the kittens away, there's that kind of level of emotional distance. I would imagine it's the same for them. There's not that depth there. So yeah, it could possibly very well be the same wound. Ross Rosenberg in his book, which I really enjoyed, The Human Magnet Syndrome, he had talked about, he really kind of spelled it out. But in short, we tend to date according to the same level of our function or dysfunction. More often than not, it tends to be our dysfunction, because these are vulnerabilities. We're trying to get our needs met. we're driven, like it's really hard to progress to making good decisions if any of us have core needs that haven't been met. So we're more driven by our vulnerabilities and our dysfunction than we are with what's working for us. So if a person, like on either extreme, because it's to the extreme empathy, to the extreme narcissism, both of these things, what they have in common is really poor boundaries. So, and what the challenge that people on the high end of empathy have is this kind of behavior has served them well for a very long time. And it's often heralded as a good trait. And especially because most people with high empathy, they tend to get into high empathy professions. They tend to become social workers, nurses, teachers, they're the caregivers of the world. And they tend to be really good at their job because they've had years and years of experience with detecting these things, whereas normal, quote unquote, normal people don't. But the challenge with that is the challenge is when you're so in tune with somebody else's needs, you're not with your own. So if you've grown up and you've had, 20 plus years where you've always been on the back burner, even if you've been willing to put yourself on the back burner so that everybody else was okay, that's a problem. And so kind of leveling that stuff out is the challenge, is developing boundaries and working with people that have such high empathy. They tend to feel selfish if they even acknowledge that they have wants and needs. They tend to feel, I should really be grateful for what I have. I don't, PMLity kind of calls it wantless and needless. It's all about other people. It's not about me. They tend to feel, somebody had mentioned the other day, like, oh, wouldn't it be so great if you could have two empaths that, are in the support group, like meet and start dating. Like, can't we just have like an empath dating website? But the problem is empaths are most comfortable when we're in tune with other people's emotions. So we almost need somebody, there is like, if that dysfunction is still there, like you can have, but let me just back up. Like you can have a person that has a high degree of empathy, but if they learn healthy boundaries, it's a game changer. And so then you can still tell the emotional climate and be very in tune with other people's needs, but it's not to like a debilitating degree. So just know that. But if you have two empaths, then one is kind of redundant. So, because it's uncomfortable. If both people are like, you know what, I'm more comfortable making you the priority, and nobody wants to be the number one priority because they're so like, hey, you know what, I really need somebody else. I feel best when I'm in that caregiving kind of mothering, nurturing role for somebody else. That's the challenge. And then that gets you right back in that drama triangle. So that's unhealthy boundaries. So learning how to kind of rein that in and having, and again, PMLity describes it in terms of getting out of these relationships where it's a power over, like what does she call it? A one up or one down. So it's unequal. And whereas like a healthy relationship, there's that mutuality. It's not one up, one down. It's not power over, kind of power under dynamic. It's the equality there. So that sense of mutuality, of dignity and respect, and you're a healthy individual, like you're a whole person. You're not looking to me to meet, to fix you or to rescue you or to do any of that. Like you're able to maturely like attend to your own wants and needs. You know who you are. You can be assertive. We can have this kind of meeting, this middle ground. Like you have two complete healed people that are coming together to form a relationship, not two deeply damaged people who are coming together kind of like, rats clinging to each other on a drowning ship. Like there's not that level of, I'm so afraid to be alone. I don't know. I feel unloved if I'm not in a relationship. I feel worthless. they're not getting into relationships trying to complete themselves. They're getting into it because this relationship is enjoyable and this relationship is nurturing for both people. So, okay. Let's see. Where are we with time? We have about 5 more minutes and then we'll get into our meditation here. Yeah. And Bonnie says, yes. And 2 narcissists will cannibalize each other. And that would be, it's the same thing. Like they would have a very difficult relationship because it really will end up being like that. You've got 2 people that are completely self-oriented. There's no room for anybody else. So, and they might be okay with that if, but those relationships don't tend to end well because you've got 2 people that feel entitled and justified. And if they don't really have any moral compass and they're pathological liars, the fact that somebody else could, like their significant other could also be that way. Like my guess would be a lot of those, I just don't think that would work long-term. The level of chaos would be through the roof, because narcissists, they don't want a partner, like they want a helpmate kind of a thing. They want an assistant, and somebody has to be willing to play that assistant role. So, but if you do have a couple that are both kind of like on the sociopathic end of the spectrum, there might be this acknowledgement that there's some sort of benefit for them to be together. But I think a lot of times those relationships are more for show and convenience and what they can get out of it. The relation, I shouldn't even say this out loud. I don't mean this politically at all, but like I was thinking about the Clintons, with when you've got 2 people that are questionable. So, okay. Let's see. Are there any more? Agatha says, okay, good night. Good night. I just saw your message. Okay, let's see here. Okay, so let's see if we can find one more last question. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. George says, yeah, is there honor among thieves with narcissists? No, there's not. I really feel like the best portrayal of all of this, these kinds of like the selfishness and the lack of the evil having no limits, is the Game of Thrones. I think that show captures this kind of behavior unlike anything I've ever seen before. So you have, Joffrey, you have Littlefinger, you have Cersei, you have Ramsay Bolton, you have, who's it, Euron Greyjoy. But I would say the main ones, like Joffrey is a great example of, sadistic, malignant narcissist. And then you have Littlefinger, who's kind of more of your sociopathic, charming, finessing kind of a person, but they're all in it for themselves. Like they might work together, but as soon as there's no connection there, I forget what, there was another show. It might have been Mindhunters. Maybe there was some show anyways, where these 2 police officers were interviewing these different serial killers. I think it was fictional. And the one serial killer had a bird that he had nursed back to health. And I thought this was so spot on. And so the one cop was like, kind of like, oh, wow, okay, this guy has empathy. Like he seems to care. He has this connection. And this guy, the serial killer had been nursing this bird for a while, had, you would think, some sort of connection. And then in order to make his point, the serial killer takes the bird and he throws it into the fan and he kills the bird. And he just looks at the cop and he said something like, well, I guess today wasn't his lucky day. And that's it. Like, you think there might be a connection. There's no connection. There's no depth there. For them to connect like that is not emotionally safe. And when a person has walls up like that and they've had them up for a long, long time, they're not coming down. Like they're for sure not coming down easily. Like, they're there for a reason. So yeah, I think if you want to see that behavior in motion, if you're not super, traumatized, Game of Thrones. Okay. Let's see here. So I guess with that, the dark note, let's go into something light and do our guided meditation for the evening. So if you have a chance, find a comfortable spot, either sitting or laying down, where you can just be fully present in your body and in this moment. Taking some deep breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. With each breath, allowing that oxygen to travel deep down into the bases of your lungs. Letting your full chest expand and contract. Deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Taking note of how your body feels at this moment. Feeling your body in the chair or lying down. Feeling any sensations that might be underneath you. Fabric, clothing. Noticing any smells around you. Any sounds. The hum of an air conditioner or a heater. Cars driving by. Whatever's going on in your environment, just taking some time to really be present. Noticing the temperature of the room. Is it warm? Is it cool? Is it just right? Feeling the heaviness of your body as you settle in. And continuing to breathe. knowing that for right now, you are in this moment and that there's no need to have any anxiety about the future or any anxiety or fear or pain about the past. That for right now, we are here. And this moment is unfolding as I speak. So now bring your attention to the top of your head, releasing any stress, tension, or anxiety that you might have in your forehead, your eyebrows, in your eyes. Relaxing your cheeks and your jaw, letting your tongue fall from the roof of your mouth. Relaxing your neck and your shoulders. Allowing your shoulders to roll back, really open up your chest. Knowing that you are safe in this moment. Relaxing your chest, your stomach, releasing any tension or anxiety that you might have. Truly feeling the difference in your stomach when you allow yourself to relax. Relaxing your hips, your thighs, your calves, and your feet. Allowing your legs to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable for you. Feeling the heaviness of your legs as you relax. Bringing your attention back up to your arms. Allowing your arms to grow heavy as you allow them to relax. Relaxing your shoulders, your biceps and your triceps, all of the muscles in your arms, your forearms, your fingers, allowing your arms and your hands to fall into whatever position is the most comfortable. Continuing to breathe. Now tuning inward, tuning into how you feel in this moment. If you feel calm, somewhat relaxed, do you feel safe? How are you feeling right now? There is no wrong answer to this. Just acknowledging any emotions that come up. And if you do feel safe or secure or calm, hold on to this feeling. This is a good feeling. And it's present when you are safe, This is kind of a neutral emotional state. Ideally, that we feel this way most of the time. And again, tuning inward, noticing how you feel, if you're feeling safe and calm and relaxed. And maybe you only feel 25% calm or 25% relaxed. That's okay. Just tune in to how that feels. Just acknowledging that your inner self, this inner guidance system that you have, it's always there. Deep down, you really do know how it feels when something feels safe. You know how it feels when something drains your energy and when something gives you energy. And you know what is for you and what is not for you. You are very wise, and your body and brain is a magnificent gift. Let's take some time. Let's take some time to connect, I think, with everything just joyful, anything that sparks joy. How about that? Taking time to connect with whatever sparks joy for you. Could be a rainbow. Could, if you're like me, it's a rainy day. Could be a snowy day or a sunny day. Could be a good cup of coffee or a cup of tea for all the people here in the UK. The little things in life that spark joy for you. Just taking some time to be thankful and grateful for all of the little and big things that spark joy. And knowing that you can bring more of that into your life. Regardless of your current situation, that there are still some things that you can control. And finding things that spark joy is one of them. And again, sometimes it's just noticing what we already have. Hot, clean water, vitamins. There's so much, truly so much. And let's take some time to just appreciate the different people that you have in your life, either online or in your day-to-day life, that have made a difference, that have sparked some joy, that have maybe been a support to you in some way, have given you a smile or given you just some comfort when you needed that. Might be a person at work, might be a total stranger. Might be some people in this chat tonight that you see week after week, whose presence sparks joy for you. Noticing how that feeling feels, how it feels to feel appreciative and how it feels to feel somewhat joyful. Makes you kind of giddy inside. puts a smile on your face. That's the feeling. Steer into that. Move towards what gives you peace and what sparks joy. Knowing that your safety and sanity are always your North Star, and that you really do know what is best for you. And with that said, come on back. And open your eyes. So thank you guys so much for being here tonight. And I will see you guys. What am I going to see you next? Tuesday. That'll be at my channel. Tuesday live stream. Angie and I are going to be live at my channel 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I hope you can make it. And if not, then hopefully I'll see you Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And you can move forward and heal from this. So take care and hugs to everyone. So good night.